started. It's a beautiful day out there, and I'm sure there's many other things you'd rather do than be in here in this room listening to me. So we'll just dive right in. We're going to talk about the fire station at length, but since I have a captive audience, I'm going to tell you, just like if you were here 2 years ago, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to run through real quick some of the other things that we're doing. We are not a public safety building committee. All right, we are the Town Properties Committee. We are here to sort of look at all properties across the town and help to prioritize and get through, make sure that we have the correct repairs. I am the chair. Colleen Thompson, there's Colleen right there, is our clerk. If you ever want to read the best minutes ever written, that's where they are. I look at that and go, wow, did all that happen? Nancy Butler couldn't make it here today, but she's heard this once or twice before, so she's okay with that. Ross McPherson here. All of you know John Trainer. I don't know where he's, there he is, hiding in the back. And our newest member, who decided he liked some punishment in life and be part of this, is Mark Wallace. So we're very happy to have him. Great new talent. Just to review real quick, one of our big things here is being proactive. We're trying not to wait until things actually fall off before we fix them, because that tends to cost more money. And we're looking to really try and make sure that we're using the correct services, particularly professionalized services, in order to maybe spend a little bit of money up front, but to get a much, much better result out of that. We recently redid the roof on this part of the building. You notice out there they're doing the front of the building. I think this is the first time, what we're saying, 25 years maybe, that the roof is all one color. So that's just an aesthetic thing, but it also, by the time they're done, will not leak. When they did this part of the roof, our architect that oversees these projects came up with this punch list that I just looked at and go, God, I'm tired just looking at this. But all of the little things that they found in looking at that needed to be done before the contractor got their final payment. And that allows us to be able to make sure that we actually, remember, we've been working on this side of the roofs for, I don't know, it feels like 10, 15 years, and they fix things and things keep leaking, and they fix things and things keep leaking. No leaks since the work was done. And that's because it's more than just throwing shingles on. It's about the flashing. It's about how things are installed and making sure it's all done right. And then, while we are here to spend money, because that's how you fix things, we are trying to do it to make sure that we have a limited impact on the town's budget. We look for grants. We look for being able to leverage different funds. And again, we look to do things once, do it right, and therefore that's going to, in the long term, be a much less expensive way to do things. So I think this is one of the greatest stories here, and we have Mike to thank for a lot of this. We actually get 2 pages of stuff about what we've done in the library in the last 2 years. Mike's been working with us very closely. I will admit that he has done a lot of the work himself, but we're here to help support him, help make sure that he has the funds that he needs to be able to get that done. And if you haven't been in the library in the last few weeks, you must stop over on the way out. It looks like a new building inside. And so if you remember 2 years ago, we were talking about the library and the water heater, and we didn't know where it was. We lost it. It was not downstairs. There were no hot water pipes. We're like, how is this possible? How did they build the building? It actually sits above the circulation desk in the ceiling. So finally, one contractor finally found it. We fixed that. They have hot water now. We fixed the lighting issues in adult fiction. Mike did work to get the ramp fixed up. Looks like it needs a little more work, but
that's coming.
That's coming. New carpet throughout the building as of a couple weeks ago. So the children's room was done a little while back, and now the whole building has new carpet, and the wood floors were finished absolutely beautiful. We had some children's room shelving, and Silver Lake Carpentry Department helped to get that done. And so we also did some less glamorous things over there. We had some issues with the doors in the back of the building. Those have been replaced. We had a heat pump put in for the front part of the building. That was a Green Communities grant, so that cost us nothing out of our budgets. we were missing a leaching field for the library. Like, kind of just wasn't there. Board of Health sorted that out. The new leaching field's in there. Looks like we have to do something about the grass because it doesn't look very grassy. New raised garden beds. It was a Girl Scout project that Mike worked really hard on. The parking lines and some cleanup on the back patio. That's a lot for a couple of years, and the building looks absolutely great. And we have some new books in for the kids as well, right? So, a lot of work done at the Dennett over the last couple of years. You can kind of see there. Probably the biggest one that I would point to is the guest parking they added up by the front doors has been really well used. And then we also spent a fair amount of time over the last couple of years getting a solar array added to the back of the building. That was not at any cost to the town, but as a result of that, we are able to generate about 65% of the electricity for the building, and for that we pay only a little over 6.5 cents a kilowatt hour. I think 14 is about the rate right now in Plympton. And that we will be paying for the next 20 years. So that's a pretty good deal. It will have a greater impact as we go through time. We just talked about this. This roof was all done, professionalized services used here, and a fair amount of work done at the old townhouse. I think we talked last time, we had some issues in the little back room that was there. We had some water infiltration, which got into the insulation, which then created a lot of mold, which then made its way through the building if the doors weren't shut. Got that all cleaned up, but then we were able to get that all sorted out. That's all watertight now. We put a whole new roof on the main building because that roof was leaking. All new insulation, proper vapor barriers put in, and again, professionalized services used here. Architects took care of that, made sure that everything was done the way that the building inspector wanted it, and all up to code. So that building is all weather tight, good complete envelope. And then also Green Communities grant for a heat pump in that building, and one of the big reasons for that is, well, one, it helps save some energy, but the bigger reason is that we can keep the humidity at bay during the summer, which is one of the things that building has been plagued with for years. This you can see, it's going on right now. So they just started Thursday, believe it or not. They expect to be done in 2 weeks. I think that's kind of crazy, but we will see. That said, when they do go through the whole process, again, the architects will go through, make sure everything is done correctly. We're doing more than simply putting new shingles on, and there's a flat roof up there too that needs to be addressed, but there'll be all new flashing. They're going to restore the cupola and also do work on the chimney as well. So everything up there will be sorted. There's currently roof access up through the attic. You want to have something fun, go try that out. We're going to get rid of that. There's no need to have a hole in the roof when we can get up on the building just fine through ladders off the back of the building. So we will be in much better shape with that. And then with this, the whole building now has a new roofing system. Keeps nice and dry, at least from things above. Proposed project for town meeting. This is be a CPA project. You'll notice that there's different funds being used in different places to try and get things done. We need a new door. That one's, well, if you open it, I think it will literally fall off. So we're going to put a new door in and then fix up all of the surround with this. So this will, now the building will sort of be all put back together in pretty good stead. And we'll also be replacing certain parts of the molding, like here where it touches concrete. That's not a good thing. Wood and concrete and water, it just doesn't work very well together long term. So this will be a nice addition. We are hoping to repurpose the hardware. It's actually really nice, and we think original. This is a little less, I guess sexy for lack of a better term. We need a public water supply for this whole complex. So right now, the library has its own well, fire station, police station, and this building are on a well that's in the basement. Let's just hope it keeps going, because if we have to do anything to it, we're in trouble, because it's under, we have to access it from the floor above to be able to get it all out. And the town barn has 2 wells down there. None of them are meeting current public water supply requirements. You'll see the circles. These are the wells up here. You see circles around them. That's a required minimum buffer zone that you can have really no activity in order to make sure that the water supply stays clean. And clearly, if you have it in the town hall, you put 100, we have parking, we have all sorts of stuff going on around it. So that is our public water supply for the moment because we're putting in the new wells. And this project will end up putting in, we'll drill 3 wells while they're out there. We're going to use 2, and those wells will alternate on a regular cycle so that you're able to draw from one and then from the other. And should something down the road go off with one of the wells, we will have a 3rd well there that we can open up, test, and get online. I'm sure you're looking at that going, well, but that's a little ways away. Yes, we're going to have to dig some big trenches and get the water to all of the buildings on the whole complex. So it will service not only the highway barn, but all the buildings up here on top of the hill. And this will be a proper public water supply. We'll have water treatment down in the basement here, and then send the water all back out from here. And this is all going to be, we're planning to use our ARPA funds that we got as part of the American Rescue Plan Act to pay for this. So we're very lucky to have those funds because this would otherwise be a pretty decent sized bill for us to have to absorb at town meeting. Should I just leave this and walk away? Okay. So here we're at the top of the main show. Yeah, that's the tanker, and that's ambulance 2, and the bumpers do just fit under one another there, and that's so that you have about this much room.
Probably even less.
No less. You can slide by without having to open the door to get over, because that far wall has a bunch of lockers. It's also the O2 station over there, and I think the workbench too is all over on that wall. There's a later picture of that, and you'll see it's not a lot of room. But that's sort of that's our sort of biggest issue here, is that we have really significant physical and occupational safety concerns for our personnel that are in that building. This is not OSHA compliant. My greatest fear is that late night accident, coming back from a call, backing in, and someone gets caught between us. Right? This is not how you have it. In modern station, we're probably here to mark, at least, between the vehicles. You don't park vehicles right back to back. And so, we have this. We have inadequate space and facilities to keep the gear, and also to clean the gear. If you've probably all been to the pancake breakfast, and you see when you're in there, you have the office here, and you have the kitchen in the back, and along that wall is a whole bunch of gear. That's not how you do it. Gear is separated from where you're moving by. Because even when you clean the gear, there's still the opportunity for different types of carcinogens to be able to come off as you're brushing by the gear and all that. A modern station has all of this stuff segregated in appropriate places. You even have a way, when you come in from a call, you don't walk in through like your main door, you walk in through an area where you can clean up, where you can shower, where the gear can be cleaned, and then you enter into the clean space of the station. Other things here, there is no security. There's a lock on the door, but if the bay door is open, you can walk into the whole station. That's not typically how we function in a modern station. You would have the public areas would be open to the public, and then you would secure off the other areas. So that's not something that we really can do or have the ability to do, the way the station is set up. And the building was built in the early 1970s for a call fire department. It's done a really, really good job for many, many years. I mean, we're 50 years in, and the building is still just meeting our needs, right? And so there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a 50-year-old building, and it was not designed to have the department that we have today. Cheryl, anything you want to add?
There's no room for growth when you look at this, so as modern equipment continues to get bigger, our engine 1 is going to be 30 years old next year. Engine 2, which is our primary piece, is going to be turning 11. So at that point, we're not going to have the ability to put additional apparatus in there. A2, the ambulance that you can see the back end there, is a few feet shorter than A1. That is a gas engine, it's underpowered. It would be really difficult for us to replace that ambulance with an ambulance that size. And clearly we don't have any space to put an ambulance that's the same size as A1. So right now we're kind of handcuffed with the apparatus that we have. A2 is also about to be 10 years old, which is kind of the average age that the state wants to see an ambulance in service. I think it still has another few years left to it, but it's a little tired and certainly smaller and more difficult for our crews to work in. But it works for now. We just won't be able to replace that in our current station because we literally won't be able to fit another piece of apparatus that's the same size. Brush Breaker 184 has to stay parked outside. In the winter, we drain it and bring it down to Center Street, but we have no place to put it, and that's one of our primary brush trucks that can actually go into the woods. And some of the stuff that we've noticed, the hoses that are stored on top are starting to see some signs of deterioration just from being parked in the sun. So having a building that we can fit all of our apparatus in is going to be extra important to increase the longevity of our pieces of equipment. We can't leave things outside and expect them to last for their full lifespan.
And then just to add to that, I mean, you can't have, none of these vehicles can function sitting outside. So, you know, what we do today, because we have room for, well, that's being unkind to the word room. We have room for 6 apparatus in the building. We have 7. So you do have to drain that because vehicles either have water in them, which doesn't do well when it freezes, or you have medications in them, which need to be kept. And so these need to be inside a building. And so it's a big need. So
Yeah, state law mandates that the ambulances have to be in a climate-controlled building. It's part of the Mass General Law that any ambulance that's a piece of apparatus ready to respond has to be stored inside. So it wouldn't even be an option to move the ambulances out, either one outside. Because of state law, we wouldn't be able to get it registered and inspected.
So, you know, as we've been talking about, and again, the safety things go along with the space thing, right? It's all part of the same thing. But like the other piece to note is that when, if you go by the station and you see the equipment outside with the lights on and they're doing it, that's maintenance. They're doing maintenance, and you do it. Is it weekly that we're checking the vehicles? Or?
So the primary pieces of apparatus get checked every day, and then each truck has its own day of the week. Each of the other apparatus has its own day of the week that we go through it, check fluids, make sure all the lights are operating appropriately to all the air packs and the fire apparatus. Just generalized, making sure that nothing, pull them out, make sure that there's not extra fluids on the ground and things of that nature.
And this has to be done outside. There is not room in the station, and yes, the extreme is what we were showing on the other page, but it's not really, it's only incrementally better depending on what of the other 2 bays you're in. So you really can't work on the vehicles inside the building. They're also much closer than what, from a side-to-side perspective than what you would see in a modern station because the vehicles have gotten a lot bigger. I mean, looking at just this illustration, your average 8 feet wide, space around that versus 7 feet, everything just gets a little bit bigger, everything gets tighter, and it causes, a lot of challenges for the department to operate safely and to operate efficiently. And then, this is a little thing, but it's, I'm sure, not helpful. We have stuff in 4 different locations across 3 different areas of the town. We use a room down here in the basement for storage. We have the station, we have the container next door, and then the station, and then also up at the transfer station. So when you're looking at this is engine 1 and ambulance 1. You see it's better. I mean, a cat could walk through there. We have holes cut in the walls to make sure that certain pieces of the apparatus, if they're tucked back, can actually fit, and we have enough room. There's not only for this one, but there's also a hole cut in the wall for the one of the outflow pipes on the tanker, just in case we have to bring, and it is, it sits only about this far off the wall. You can see this is the amount of room you have to work on the far side of the building. It's not much. 2 people do not fit comfortably by. And then I think the other thing that's important to note is that's engine 2 framed out in the doorway. I believe those doors are 11 feet. Current spec is 14. So a new station would have a 14-foot wide door, which one creates better safety for the personnel, but it also makes sure that the apparatus in the building don't get into a fight. All right, so we were here 2 years ago. We went to town meeting. We got $300,000 to do a needs analysis and schematic design, which means that not that we have a whole big thick stack of designs, but that we've gone through, figured out how much space we need, come up with a conceptual design, figured out about how much that might cost so that we have a place to sort of begin. So we did that. The whole process, we did the same thing we did with the police station. Our architect sat down with the fire department, went through, and where you start out is sort of, okay, what is everything that you need and what would you like to have, okay? And so they take that, they come back with an initial design. A committee like ours looks at it and goes, no, you can't have all that. So then we worked together with the department, which we did, to come down, trim down the size of the station to something that we believe meets the full programmatic needs of the department and that can last us, for 40 to 50 years. And being Plympton, it's probably going to have to be a little longer. The current design takes into account all of the safety requirements, all of the different items and things that need to be in a building in order to make it a fully functional, programmatically correct fire station. We also spent a fair amount of time validating the site placement. Will it work there? How will things, fit? What other things by putting it in this place versus this place? What are the benefits? What are the detractors? And then also, going through and making sure that we have an idea of how much this is going to cost. And then the other piece of this too, of course, is that we knew we were adding another building to the complex. And as a result, we would need to look at our water supply. And so as that process started to unfold, we pressed pause on the work on the fire station to make sure that we understood where we could put the wells that would satisfy all of the buildings, that we could put them there without any problems with where we thought the fire station could go. Because ultimately, if those two were in conflict, then we need to find a different place for the fire station. Because you have to have a public water supply for the buildings that are on this space. So we took the time to go through that. We have we worked with a consultant to help us work with DEP to be able to site the wells, be able to figure out that whole plan that you saw on the other page, and working very closely with Department of Environmental Protection to make sure that we can put the wells in that will serve the needs of not only the buildings that are here, but of a new fire station. So, what does a new station get us? First of all, it addresses the safety, security, and health concerns that we have not only for the fire personnel and primarily for the fire personnel, but for anyone visiting the station. It gets us appropriate apparatus bays, and as you can see here, these are the different apparatus that are sized in here. This one is actually not an apparatus, but just to show size. So you've got the engines, you've got the tankers, and the tankers, 2 ambulances and so on in here. And this is probably actually the old ambulance, it's the old A1, not the new one, so it'd be a little bigger. But you can see there's plenty of space around the vehicles, plenty of space to be able to maintain them, plenty of space to make sure that everyone is safe. One thing you will notice that we have here is we do not have doors in the back. So one of the things that you hear a lot from the fire station is what they call drive-through bays. When we spent a lot of time during this process going and visiting other stations with drive-through bays, no one drives through. They all back the vehicles into the bays. So one of the things we did was to say, no, that's got to go, because 4 more doors costs money. And it's a lot better for us to be able to do that. It also allowed us to move all of this. This is all the places where you have decontamination and stuff like that. All of this sort of stuff back here, we moved it off the side of the building and onto the back. And that allows us for the ability down the road, if there were a need at some point to add another bay, there would be a way to do that without being particularly disruptive to the station, because there's nothing on this whole side of the building. The other thing we did is we extended the roof line down here, and this is actually basically a covered area that they can put other things there, like the trailers, and to Cheryl's point about not having things sit in the sun, this at least helps them to not sit in the sun, and we're not necessarily taking up extra space in the apparatus space. We have the opportunity for the safe storage of supplies and gears, and this whole setup here, you've got, this is more of the administration area, this is the crew area, and it allows for all of the things that they need to do, and it allows it to be flexible space. So we have a really rather large open area for the admin area rather than a bunch of small offices, in order to be able to, for them to flex as they need to, depending on what the department's needs are. And then we actually have included in this station a fair amount of space for community interaction. Up here you'll see there's a training room, and then there's also a medical room. And so that's one of the things we saw in a lot of the newer stations, is that they had a room off of the public area where you could do BP checks or any other types of things if someone came in and wasn't feeling well.
We can get our podiatrist in there.
Podiatrist, exactly. So any number of opportunities there to have a nice space, sort of like what you see in your doctor's office. Same type of room. And not a big deal to add that here, but something we saw in a few stations and very quickly became high on our list that we wanted to do. Because it's not just about having a place for the department to be able to do their stuff, it's also to be part of the community. The buildings are designed to be communities buildings, and sort of have both spaces there. So where's the station going? It is not going on the ball fields. Okay, let's just I want that to be incredibly clear, because I thought that was really clear. And what was it, about 3 months ago, all of a sudden it was back around again. Oh, the ball fields are going. So we're not doing that. So if you recall, a few years ago, I don't remember how far, 4 or 5 years ago, we purchased a piece of land and added on to the land we have here, which that's what we're using. The existing land goes sort of back here, right? And so the new piece stretches all the way down to the town barn. That's where we're putting the wells, and that's where we're proposing to put the fire station. And this is a conceptual drawing sort of where we would like to see the town complex to go. This isn't, not all of this would get done with the fire station. Really think about, town hall over is really what we're talking about with the fire station. But we would like to actually have real parking spaces up here someday. We'd like to not have, 3 entrances coming out. We'd like to have handicap spaces that don't allow wheelchairs to roll into 58. Just a few things that we're hoping for. And you can see we still have a nice mix of public safety and community on the whole space that's up here. And the other thing, that by moving the fire station over to that side, it cleans up what we have today, where we have our fire apparatus leaving through a parking lot where we have kids coming from the ball fields or going over the library, and it's just not ideal. It's not ideal for the department when they're trying to get somewhere quickly, and it's not ideal for the public either. So again, we hope that there's some additional community benefits. As I talked about, the medical room and the training room, there's an example of what a training room could look like. We have a small room over in the police station, similar type. This one would be a little bit larger. Probably would be down the road a good place to use for a cooling and warming center. especially being able to have EMTs in the building there in case anyone needed it. And also, you know, if we had that building, we could be talking over there right now. We could use the room that way too. And then one of the other things that we've thought about is repurposing the existing fire station as a community senior center. You know, we think that there is an opportunity pretty much when the fire department would move out, that we could use the building largely as is. And then down the road, look at some minor upgrades in order to, you know, to make it a little bit better. But, you know, there's a lot of work that the department's done in order to make the best out of that building, and we don't necessarily want to just throw that away. And if we were going to make a whole new community center, you know, we're talking about a substantial amount of money. So one of the questions that we get periodically is, why are we not renovating the station? And why haven't we looked at that? Well, we have looked at it. It was looked at in 2014. There was a committee that precedes us, on the Town Building Needs Study Committee, and they worked with an architectural firm called Reinhardt, and they went through and did a whole bunch of different options for this whole complex up here. And one of the many things that was looked at is doing a renovation to the fire station itself. Here is one of the schematics. This was out of the report. This was not one of the recommended paths to go forward with. And there's some reasons why, and we have why, which we'll go through, but also we've revalidated this both with our architectural firm as well as with other architects that do public safety buildings that we've had conversations with about renovation versus building new, given the age of the station and given the current conditions. So one of the big things that causes you're ready to start going, wait a minute, I don't know if this makes sense, is that you can't renovate the station while they're in it. So they need to go somewhere. And we've already talked about how the apparatus needs to be inside. So that means you have to put up a temporary station. And some of the other communities that have done that have spent millions of dollars on that. And so even on a conservative estimate, even if we can get a really good deal, let's say it's $1.5 million, you're $1.5 million out on your budget before you even get to the point of swinging a hammer.
And that's a rental station too, so it's not even a building we could repurpose down the road. The town of Greenfield did this 5 years ago. Their 3-bay station, temporary, cost them $1.5 million in 2018 dollars. And they went over on their construction schedule and spent another $500,000 in extra rental costs. So $2 to $3 million for a building that we're not going to get any value out of is a pretty sizable chunk of change.
And I think in that instance, they were renovating a station because it was historic.
They were.
Right, so there was an added benefit to them. They didn't want to see the old historic station not be reused, and so they felt that it was worth spending the extra money. We have another issue. We have no place to put it. So, you know, think about it. We can't put it in the parking lot. There'll be no parking lot. So we really don't have the space to put a building up, so that would be an added cost as well, either to rent some land or lease it for a short period of time, and then you have utilities and you have, you know, septic and water and all that stuff that you've got to figure out as to how you're going to do that if you're going to go down that path.
And response times too will vary depending on where we have to put it.
Right. And generally, when you even look at this study back in 2014, there is a differential, you know, per square foot, just at the high level estimating. They already start off saying, oh, it's going to cost more to renovate. I've had projects personally where we're halfway through and the builder goes, you know, it would have been cheaper just to knock it down and rebuild. It's like, you know, that's not helpful to tell me that now. But renovating is, you know, there's always something hidden behind a wall. And so you're going to have hidden costs that you're not going to be able to account for. And then probably a bigger issue with respect to the renovation is that, you know, if you even look at this, you add on that new space there, now more than 50% of the building has been altered. And as a result, you're required to come up to code with all relevant codes up to 2024. Electrical, seismic codes, all these different things. It's highly unlikely that this building, and a lot of issues were noted in the Reinhardt report, very unlikely that there would be very much left of the building by the point that you've taken it apart and realized the code issues that you have. And the ball fields would need to move. There isn't room to build, to add to the square footage of that station where it is without impacting the ball fields, because there's no room in the parking lot to take over. You know, the parking lot as is not adequate, and that's largely by design, but even when you design it properly, there isn't a huge extra area of space. So I think the short answer is it's cost prohibitive to renovate.
The most expensive thing in construction is the unknown. So if a builder doesn't know what it's going to cost, they're going to make sure that they cover themselves. And they're not going to give us money back if they discover it's cheaper. And in most cases, we would put this out to bid. The company that won the bid would come in and knock the station down and build new because it's cheaper for them to do it and faster. So it's definitely not the preferred way to go in construction.
All right, so, yes.
Is there enough room for the expansion of the library? It was right next to the parking lot. You're going to expand the library.
We're expanding the library?
Sure. Sometime.
All in favor?
Sometime they have
I'm less concerned about adding some space to the library than I am adding 4 apparatus space.
I was just talking about placement.
Yeah, if we go back to, this, the space between the library and the existing fire station isn't changing. So, you know, it's if you added to that building, you would end up creating problems for space. So, you know, could you add to the library? Hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, you could.
Another thing too, if that community center is open, that's going to be space that the library can use for programs and things like that. So in a way, we are adding more space to the library.
That's a good point. So where we're at right now, we're yes, Jen?
Per the standard of the state of Massachusetts, how many ambulance do we need and how many fire trucks do we need per the standard of the state?
Well, we're already, so recommendations are that you have 4 people per piece of apparatus that you have, which we're already below that. So we're already kind of making do with what we have. There is no set minimum, like they don't give recommendations. We staff 2 people 24 hours a day, and then Monday through Friday you have myself and Captain Shostin at the station, which we're actually able to act as the second ambulance crew. It's kind of funny when I walk into the hospital and they're like, why is the chief on the ambulance? But small town, we do what we have to do, and I'm happy to do that. Because I'm pretty proud to say that our numbers of mutual aid calls that have had to come in have gone way down. I was just looking real quick before I came over here, and last year, of the 20 some odd times that a second medical call came in, so our primary ambulance was tied up on a call, we only had to call a mutual aid ambulance in once because we were able to get that much staffing to come back and take care of our own community with our own people. So I'm pretty proud to say that we've done that. But to answer your question, there are no set minimums. We have an obligation to provide ALS service, so advanced life support service, paramedic level service to the community per our service zone agreement with the state. So we at least have to have a paramedic and a BLS level, a basic life support level member at the station to provide care 24 hours a day. So we've set that standard with the state, but the state doesn't regulate anything beyond what our service zone agreement is.
And then if you
So how many ambulance do we have?
We have 2.
We have 2.
Yes.
It is enough
Yes.
because most of us are seniors.
Yes. No, I think we do. I think we do really well with the 2 right now. I think our apparatus numbers are where I think that are fair. It's making sure we have enough people to staff them
And with
with our
this new
public.
building, we can have more ambulance.
We probably wouldn't increase the number of ambulances that we have. Down the road, I'd like to eventually start to have more staffing, but that's way further down the road, and we'll take some pre-planning with the finance committee on how we can do it without impacting. The good news is that we can use some of the revenue that we generate from ambulance funds to help eventually increase our staffing. But it'll be much easier to do that with another station, because right now, the sleeping quarters that we have, we only have 2 rooms. So if there's male and female, we have to, keep them separated, and we only have 1 bathroom. So when that call comes in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and if you've been sleeping for a few hours, that kind of becomes a problem, trying to get the trucks out the door quickly. So being able to have male and female bathrooms, male and female showers, and male and female sleeping quarters is a very important piece of this as well.
Is how about the fire engine? We have old, I see the old engine and then the new engine. They are almost twice the size of the old one. You showed us.
Yes.
How many fire engines do we have now?
We have 2 fire engines and 1 tanker. So we have 3 big trucks, basically. The engines are kind of their primary job is to pump water and have all the hoses that puts water on the fire, or to take water out of a pond so that we can fight the fire. The tanker is basically what we would use instead of a fire hydrant. Where Plympton doesn't have any fire hydrants, the tanker has 3,000 gallons of water in it, and it brings all the water to the scene. It has the ability for us to either hook a hose up to it, like it's a fire hydrant, or it has the ability to dump the water out into a big pool, and then drive away, get filled up, come back and bring more water back to the scene. And if we have additional needs for that, then we call Carver. Carver has 2 tankers that are readily available, or we use another town's fire hydrant.
And before I do that, just one other point to that. If you think about the way the equipment is set up, there's 2 ambulances, there's 2 engines, there's 2 brush trucks. Because just like our cars, sometimes things need to be fixed and they're offline. And if you only have 1 ambulance and it needs to go out for a few days, and of course nowadays too, very rarely do things get repaired in the same day. Oh, we got to wait for the part, right? So if that's out of service, you don't have something to back it up. And so you really need to have 2 engines, so you always have an engine as a backup. You need to have 2 ambulances, so you have an ambulance as a backup, or for the other calls. I think that's a great statistic, though. We sent out 20 calls where we're sending out the 2nd ambulance, and we only once had to use outside. And that's going to be a much quicker response time, too.
Yeah.
And for the brush trucks, too, we have 2 of those. The tanker, you can't really have redundancy for the tanker. That's a lot of money to be sitting there. But again, we have mutual aid to be able to do that. And I also think it's impressive the way that the department has set up their call sheets in order to be able to, when you have a house fire, they're not getting there and then calling for someone else to come. There are mutual calls going out, so everyone's arriving pretty regularly from the surrounding towns to make sure that we're able to knock the fire down. So,
Would there be any need for, or future consideration for a substation, for instance, over on Lake Street or another remote section of town in the future?
Doug, let me build one first.
I'm just thinking 20 years down the line.
I mean, I'll let Cheryl talk to this too, but I mean, I think the piece there is, first of all, substations aren't much cheaper. In fact, a couple of the stations we toured were more substation stations, and so it's an expensive proposition.
Oh, yes.
But second of all, I think, given that we have 2 people in the station pretty much at all times, the response times that we have to get out the door, which is almost the most important, are very, very good.
Very good. I agree.
And I think in the towns that we've seen substations in, those towns geographically were bigger areas. And where the station currently is in the middle of the town, I don't know that we would get improved response times everywhere, and we'd have to double our staffing.
But we also have mutual aid capabilities, so I understand that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking 20 years down the line, are we going to be faced with a lot of money?
I don't see that it's financially reasonable.
And I think the population forecasts for Plympton are not for significant growth that would necessitate additional
Yeah,
equipment.
and we looked at the population forecasts in building this station. The station is designed to meet Plympton's needs. for the next 40 to 50 years.
Right.
And you know, the good news is 20 years out, this won't seem like a big payment. It's
Oh,
going
no.
to at first, but it won't in 20 years. Because we just have, right now, we have the last of the Dennett debts rolling off. And we're like, oh, the Dennett debt's rolling off, that's gonna help us. We looked at the number, it's like 55 grand. It's like, oh, well, how is that possible? It seemed like a lot of money back then. But yeah, I don't foresee that.
What exactly is the new fire station supposed to cost, and are we receiving any subsidies from the state?
Nobody wants to help us build a fire station. It's unfortunate. You would think, because, and this is an issue being faced by probably, was it safe to say, hundreds of towns in the Commonwealth, that you have stations that are out of date, and they're big budgets to that. There's been talk up at the State House about trying to figure out some way to create a fund like they do for the schools, which is also not working correctly at this point. But to find some way to fund that so that you could get some matching funds back from the state. Currently, there's nothing. There was, remember we talked about American Rescue Plan Act, there was in the earlier stages of that bill, bill put in by a New Jersey senator, or line item put in by a New Jersey senator to have funds for public safety projects. We were really excited because we were further along than many others, and we could have probably leveraged that. That didn't make it through conference committee. But on the cost, we just got the cost estimate redone. So we had one done a year ago. We just got that redone. This is, I'm sure, surprising to all of you. It went up. So we're currently right now in the $12 million range for a station. Little bit of background on that. This is an estimate. And when I go through here what we're looking to do next, you notice we are not looking for approval at town meeting to build a new station. We are looking for approval to go through the process of doing the full design and bid documents. And if everything goes well, we would go out to bid ahead of town meeting and come back with a price. It's just going to be better than what you do if you're doing an estimate, because you always have to pad an estimate. We also have to look at, you know, when we would bond this, and it would be a debt exclusion, so it's not just town meeting, we would have to go and vote on this. But we have to look at how much we need to exclude the debt. Because we have different revenue sources that come into the town periodically. We have various solar fields coming on with pilot agreements that adds revenue to the revenue line. And so I think we figured out it's roughly, if you bond out for 30 years, you bond out roughly 12 million. You're at about a $680,000 payment a year. But do we need to debt exclude 680,000? Or can we take 100,000 from the capital account? So now it's only 580,000, and do we have another 100 or 120 or 150,000 in net new revenue coming into the town that we can earmark for that? And then you're only bonding out, you know, you're only bonding out, well, you're still bonding it fully out, but you're only looking to debt exclude an additional 450,000. That's part of what the work we have to do this fall as well, is to figure out where those numbers come.
I think the other piece about why it's important to do it this way is we are one incident away from the state telling us that we have to do a new building, and they will probably make us build a temporary one. If we've got plans on the shelf and are in process, they will probably let us continue that process instead of forcing us to build a $2 million station that we won't have a choice in. So this gives us some leverage, should something happen, hopefully it doesn't, to make sure that we're spending less than we potentially have to.
And when we go through the design, the full design process, that's the place where we start getting to say, okay, do we really need this or do we really need that? And so when they did the first pass of the design for the police station, we were over $5 million. We ended up spending 3.2. And part of that process, I'm not saying we're going to go down from 12 to 8. That's not likely. But can we take money out of that, like we already did with saying you have 4 doors, not 8? Are there places where we're not skimping on the program, but you're looking at where can we be frugal. We intend to build a fire station like that police station. It's a nice building, it's an attractive building, it meets the program needs, but it's not fancy. No one has ever said that our 6,000 square foot ranch over here is fancy, but it does what they need to do, and it meets those needs. And that's sort of where we're going, and our hope is that by the time we're able to come back to town meeting next year, if we get this through, that we come back to town meeting next year, that we can come back with a price tag that's less, and with solutions for the financing so that the impact is, back to that term, mitigated. It's going to cost more money. And the other thing I can promise you is that if we let's say we don't pass it next year, the following year it will cost more money again. And so we saw about a 7 to 8% increase in the costs from building it this year to building it next year. And that's probably what we would expect for it. It's not increasing at 2%. You know, things have gotten better. It's not, I mean, we built this station for 520 square foot. This is coming in at 880. And when you look back at the Reinhardt study in 2014, it was closer to 300. So I can promise you it will be more expensive the more we wait. My hope is that we can get all of this work done, full design, get a final price tag on it, go out to bid, know what we're going to pay, and that we will have saved money over the estimate that we have. Yep.
How much did we give you the first time you asked for money?
You gave us $300,000. We spent about 105.
So how much is left?
So about 190,000, and that is what we're actually going to use to pay this bond. So this article at town meeting is simply to authorize us to borrow the money, and we are going to use the balance of the funds that we have, and we could probably be able to pay 3 years of that bond without impacting the budget. So the goal would be, if everything goes exactly as we want, whether that's likely, who knows, if everything goes exactly as would be ideal, we will get this money, we'll do all this work, we'll come back to town meeting with an actual bid, we'll get that approved, the ballot will have it be a yes, and we will then roll this money into the bigger thing. This 980 is part of the 12 million, okay? The 12 million cost is all the design work, all the bidding work, all of the building, all of the materials, contingencies and all that. So this isn't in addition to 12, this is part of it.
So when you come to the town meeting on May 18, you will have the assessment already, the estimate?
I have the estimate now.
You have it already?
Yeah, it's just over, it's 11.9 million, and there's probably about 700,000 in alternates. But alternates we aren't necessarily going to do. And if you go back a year ago, the estimate to build it now was 11.2 million, with about 11.9 with the estimates rolled in, with the alternates rolled in. So it's about a 7 to 8% increase year over year, from building it this year to building it next year. But that's an estimate. It should be good, but you know, a lot happens in the bid process. When we go out to bid, contractors are hungry and they're looking for work, then the bid's going to come in lower. When we bid out the police station, we ended up using a contractor who actually really couldn't bid anymore because they have various levels that you have to work at different levels and get certain size projects done before you can move to the next size project. And he was at the ceiling of what he could do. And so he needed us as much as we needed him. We needed him for his price, and he needed us for a successful job so his construction company could bid on bigger projects. The next nearest bid was $800,000 more. We did not have the money for that. So we got one bid, and we were able to accept it. Ended up being a really, really good contractor to work with. What do we have? 10 change orders across the whole project, and it was only for, not even for $100,000. So it was a really great thing, and that's what you hope in the bid process. It could go the other way too. It all depends on where the economy is and everything like that.
And I think that's one piece I'd like to emphasize is that typically in construction, we see 5 to 10 change orders per $1 million of project. And to have a police station that was 3-point-something million with only 10 change orders meant that the design development part, we spent the time and effort to get that right so there weren't any surprises. So we'd like to follow the same process here.
And if you're interested, you can, so Context Architects are the architects. They did this building. Jump on their website, take a look. They have a lot of experience in this space. And I mean, we went through, part of the thing too is we went through, because they worked with us on the police station. I think part of the benefit, you know, is that we went through schematic design much more efficiently because they already knew what we were looking for. They knew that we were not looking for something big and grand, and they knew that, you know, I mean, we had 3 meetings to kind of get down there. The first plan they came back with was pretty good. And we did look at a 2-story option and things like that. But we very quickly coalesced on the design, and they were able to get that done very quickly, which saved us money in the long run. So they're a good group to work with.
Yeah, I think we probably saved in the order of $70,000, $80,000 because they had the experience with us working on the police station. They knew what we were going to value engineer out, so they started with what they thought we could do, and we'll still value engineer beyond that.
Yeah. What else can I tell you? Yeah.
How many square feet is the apparatus for?
The whole building is 14,000. So the apparatus floor is, I'd say it's roughly 3/5 of the building.
How deep?
Page.
Trying to find what's.
Not dimensioned. There you go.
Still not dimensioned.
Just the roof pitch.
That's roof. Yeah.
Let's see. One inch is 8 feet, so. I think it's about 70, 80 feet deep. I think they're double deep bays for what we designed. So we can fit 2 apparatus in there.
2 full-size apparatus.
Would any of this funding come from the increase in taxes that we were greeted with last December? With anticipated, we were told it was for anticipated projects in the future. Would this be one of the projects?
This has nothing to do with this has nothing to do with the current budget.
Okay.
You know, again, the hope is that we can use a certain amount of funds out of the capital bucket that we create that comes out of the industrial park taxes. So, you know, we'll come up with a sort of step of different places that we are able to pull the money. The goal is not to, at least my goal is not to go out and debt exclude $680,000. I'd like to see that number come down from pull a little bit from here, pull a little bit from there, and get that number down to a more manageable place.
How much money do we have in the capital management fund? The Cisco fund?
I think it's about $500,000, $550 right now.
And then we'll.
I think we've got 300,000 coming out, if I remember the numbers off the top of my head.
Yeah, and so one of the things that does come out of that, if you remember, we did not do any override for the police station or debt exclusion. That whole building is coming exclusively out of capital. $260,000 roughly a year that comes out of it. But again, we weren't ready and it wasn't the time to do a fire station, but if we had done it then, it probably would have been $8 million. Yeah.
You already brought up the debt coming off the Dennett. Silver Lake also has debt rolling off the construction of the middle school and the high school. And Town Properties had me come in on behalf of both school committees. And we do have some projects that we'd like to earmark some of the debt rolling off Silver Lake campus, but we realize that the 3 towns also have some need for that as well. So we've already had those conversations in the lead up to this as well. So there should be additional funds. Right now, Plympton pays $158,000 a year for the building project of the high school and the middle school at the Silver Lake campus. And again, part of that should be rolling off next fiscal year, and it should be totally off 2 years from now.
And that's a good point. So the other piece of that is that if we go and vote next year to build the building, it will likely be 2 years or a little bit more before we actually start paying that $680,000, because you don't start paying until the building is done. So we should be able to, and that's what I'm talking about. We've already had a number of meetings with the finance folks in this building, but it's finding and earmarking where we know there's going to be changes in the budget, either with new growth, with debt rolling off, and trying to be able to minimize what we need to borrow and how much this will end up. So we first got to minimize what we can with the cost of the building, and then we want to minimize what we need to put into a debt exclusion. It will cost money, unfortunately.
Was there state money involved with the construction of the high school and the middle school? That was 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, we were really lucky we did that then.
So it was an advantage to save a lot of money at that point.
Well, do you remember what the reimbursement rates back then were? Between 70 and 85%.
It seemed like it was
They're now what, 35?
You're lucky if you get 35, and there's means testing that's involved now. They did put $100 million more into what's called the Mass School Building Authority's budget with the Fair Share Amendment, but that's still not enough to meet the actual needs. The age of buildings, the age of roofs to even qualify has gone up by 7 to 8 years, and the amount of money reimbursable has gone from over 50% to well under 50% during that same time frame. It's much harder to get that extra money.
And so one of the other things, as I said, we're not a fire station committee here, so we're thinking about everything going on in the town. And we had a lot of hard work done to be able to purchase Turkey Swamp, which had a decent amount of uplands and the risk that someone could get a road in there and put in a bunch of houses. Then in elementary school, pre-COVID, we were down at just about 200 students.
197.
197. And it is projected that we are going to be up at 262, 265.
We currently have 253 students. Our school has increased in size by over 25% in 4 years. We have capacity at this point, but if we had a large development go in, we would be bursting at the seams and potentially need to add a wing to that building. Low-end estimates on a wing for the Dennett is $8 to $10 million.
And I've talked to a couple of architects who do school buildings, and they are much higher than that.
Yeah, realistically, 25 to 35.
Right.
There's a school being built currently down south of us, the same size as the Dennett, and the current estimate with overages is $86 million.
For a total brand new school.
For a brand new school.
And I actually talked to a project manager as well, and I was mentioning that, if we had to put a wing on for like 15 to 18 million, and he said you don't even go through the school building program, because anything that you would get back even if you can get the 35%, they're going to end up putting into the building stuff that you don't necessarily need in the building that's going to end up eating up that extra amount. So these are the things, we are thinking about all of these things. We're very cognizant, we're all taxpayers as well. This is just one of those that
we don't have a choice. The building is not, I can promise you that building's not getting any bigger, it's not getting any safer, and it's going to cost more. Those are my promises. But we can also promise you that we'll do everything we can to keep the costs down. We've done this once, we think we can do it again, and we're also going to look to make sure that we can fund it in a way that is as good as possible for a tax increase.
I just want to mention that we may not be able to get grants to build the building, but we get a lot of grants in this town. We get green community grants, we've gotten grants for vehicles. The department heads are well aware of the need and look for these things. So everything helps.
So we're also, I mean, that's also saving our current tax burden by finding all of those grants.
Well, we paid just over $12,000 for our newest truck. The newest brush breaker was a big grant the prior chief was able to get, and we had to pay, was it 10%? No, I mean that 5%. It's a $300,000 truck we got for 12 grand. You know, there's a lot of that work going on, and all of the, like the heat, as I said, heat pump at all the heat pumps in the fire station, the heat pumps in the library, the one over at the old townhouse, those are all green community grants as being part of the green communities that we were able to get, and we did not, there was no money coming out of the tax burden for that. There's regularly, the library has gotten a couple of really nice grants that are earmarks as well. All able to do that. We also are considered a rural community. When we signed into that, we've gotten money through the school for that. And there's other available grants, and people are always looking for those in order to help. It really would be great to be able to see that financial, that impact. So there's a lot of stuff that we actually take for granted here that's actually being funded by grants. So, Anna.
Net of all the grants, how much bond issue are we going to issue? How much bond? Are we going to borrow from the bond? Are we going to issue bonds for these projects?
Well, we will borrow. What we're asking at town meeting is the authorization to borrow about, I think it's $977,000. That will be what we would borrow initially to do all of this work. And of course, if we don't use it all, then it will be available for the larger project. But if we go to do the full project, I mean, exactly what we're going to borrow will depend on what the cost of the project is. But if we go with an estimate of $12 million, we would put the bond out for $12 million, and it would result in a payment of about $680,000 at current interest rates.
Annually.
Annually. And then the goal there is, where do we fund that from? So what can we fund within our budget lines, within the revenue that we already have? And then what additional revenue do we need to make up the difference of that payment? And that's
how much credit can the town carry? How much can we borrow?
We have very little.
We can borrow.
We're actually under borrowing at this point, if you really want to think of it that way.
That's good.
Well, so when you talk to the people that know financial management of towns better than I do, they say it's not. They sort of say you should be borrowing a certain amount, and you should be, so in other words, by having some regular borrowing, you're able to make your money go further. You're almost leveraging, and we've paid for a lot of the projects here. Like we've paid for these roofs. Like we don't owe anything on the roofs. We could have, looking back on it, we could have bonded a bigger roof project and done the whole thing at once, and then we would have that other money available to do other things with. So it is something that we're looking at. It's healthy for us to do some borrowing. It'd be even healthier if we didn't have to raise any taxes to do it.
We did have the Department of Revenue come in and do a management study some years back. And one of the key points they made was, don't let your borrowing annually go down, because it'll go into the operation. So we have just about everything in the next 2 years. Everything will be paid for except for the police station. So one of the things we're figuring is, if we do the fire station, we can maintain borrowing without seeing any of that money start to end up in the budget and departments. But we don't like our departments, we like the fire station.
And that's exactly why the Silver Lake Regional School Committee has had conversations with the 3-member communities, Halifax, Kingston, and Plympton, about our debt rolling off, because we have projects that we want to pick up right when the debt rolls off, but we don't need the amount of money that we had for the building project. So we want to make sure the towns are aware that they'll be able to recapture some of those funds, and it won't go back to the tax base as an increase.
We do have we have financial team meetings, which is the town accountant, the town treasurer, the town administrator. We're invited to go, and we sit down and go through this. And once we know for sure what the building costs, when we do come back, it'll be a commitment. We'll be able to say, we can do this for X, and this is how it's going to come out, and this is the amount that will hit the tax. So people will know what it's going to be for their assessment.
All right, well, I'll stick around for a little bit if people have other questions that you want to talk offline with. But thank you all for coming. I appreciate you listening.
Good job.